It started with a lie so small it could have slipped under anyone's radar. "I'm just catching up on emails," he said, standing at the kitchen counter with his tie loosened and phone in hand. I had asked if he wanted to join me for dinner, with my sister and her kids. He smiled absently, barely looking up. "Go ahead without me. I've got a ton of work to do." I nodded, kissed his cheek, and walked out the door. I didn't know it then, but I was walking out of the last normal evening of our marriage. That lie echoed in my head just 3 hours later when my sister mentioned she'd seen someone who looked a lot like Eric at Bella Notte, the same dimly lit, intimate Italian place where he used to take me for anniversaries. She even mentioned the woman he was with had long red hair. The same red hair I found stuck to the passenger seat of his car last week. The one he swore was from his coworker's wife after carpooling to a group dinner. Something in me cracked open then. For months, the signs had been subtle. Canceled dinners, silent nights where he sat scrolling through his phone, pretending to work. The change in his scent, new cologne, foreign, musky. The shift in our intimacy, his body present, but his soul clearly elsewhere. I'd convinced myself I was overthinking. That maybe he was just stressed, or maybe I was being insecure. After all, we'd been together for nearly 8 years. Married for 5. We had routines, a life, shared passwords, or at least I thought we did. But that night, something snapped. I didn't go to dinner. I turned the car around and drove to Bella Notte. My heart pounded in my ears the whole way, adrenaline flooding my body with every stoplight. I told myself I was being paranoid, that if he was there, it would just be for business. Maybe a client meeting, a last-minute dinner. But the second I walked in and saw him, laughing, leaning close across a candlelit table, that crooked smirk he used to reserve for me, I knew. It wasn't business. It wasn't innocent. It was betrayal. He was sitting with a woman I didn't recognize, early 30s, stunning, confident. She reached across the table and touched his hand, and he didn't flinch. He welcomed it. He looked into her eyes like they held every answer he'd ever searched for. My stomach turned as I realized this wasn't some fling. He was emotionally invested. Gone, even. I didn't confront him right then. I stood in the shadows just far enough from the glow of the entryway chandelier, watching the man I thought I knew be someone else entirely. A stranger. Someone who had made a choice and kept making it every night he came home and lied to my face. I walked out, knees weak, chest tight. I sat in my car for what felt like hours, gripping the steering wheel like it might ground me. To reality. The tears didn't come immediately. They had to fight their way past the shock, the rage, the humiliation. That night, something inside me died, but something else was born. Not desperation, not grief, determination. Because I knew then, I wasn't going to be another sad story. I wasn't going to let him walk away with my dignity, my peace, or the truth. He thought he was clever. He thought he could juggle lies and hide behind emails. But he had no idea who I really was. And if he wanted to live a double life, fine. But I was about to make sure both halves of that life collided. Publicly, painfully, and without mercy. The next morning, he acted like everything was normal. He kissed my forehead, muttered something about a meeting downtown, and walked out the door with his usual travel mug and briefcase in hand. I stood at the window watching him pull out of the driveway, my hands clenched so tightly I could feel my nails digging crescents into my palms. Normal. The word felt like a slap. Because nothing was normal anymore. And maybe nothing ever had. Ben. I spent the next hour pacing the kitchen like a caged animal. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that woman's face. Her smile. The way his eyes had lit up across the table from her. And I kept hearing that sentence. Catching up on emails, like a broken record, like a cruel joke. He didn't just lie. He gaslit me. Over and over again. I started going back through the last few months. Mentally at first, then physically. Checking texts, receipts, the shared calendar on our devices. It was all there, hidden in plain sight. Subtle shifts, restaurant charges in neighborhoods he never had meetings in. Gaps in his calendar that were labeled work travel. Yet I remembered nights he came home without a suitcase. Nights he said his flight was delayed, but he didn't smell like airports. He smelled like perfume. Floral and unfamiliar. My gut had been screaming at me for weeks, maybe months, and I kept silencing it in favor of reason, in favor of trust. But trust, I realized, was exactly what he'd weaponized against me. It wasn't just that he cheated. It was that he built a whole parallel world on the ruins of our life, and he expected me to keep being the quiet, patient wife while he played house with someone else. That kind of betrayal isn't just emotional, it's logistical. We owned a house together, shared bank accounts, had a vacation booked in 3 months. We'd just refinanced the mortgage under both our names. And here he was, slipping away into a new life, while I paid half the bills and folded his laundry. The deeper I dug, the more I realized this wasn't just infidelity, it was a strategy. He had been slowly pulling out of our shared responsibilities. He'd transferred money from our joint account to a new one with only his name on it. Small amounts at first, $200 here, $500 there, spread out over time to look like normal expenses. But I could see the pattern now, a slow siphoning of funds. A methodical escape route. He was planning to leave. Quietly. Cleanly. And he was doing it with a smile on his face every morning as he walked out the door, kissed me goodbye, and texted her on the way to work. I felt like I was living in a bad movie. But the worst part? I wasn't just hurt. I was humiliated. Because I had trusted him. Because I had defended him when friends raised subtle concerns. Because I believed him when he said he was just tired, just overworked, just not feeling himself lately. I cooked dinner while he texted her under the table. I wore new lingerie, thinking it would spark something in him, not knowing someone else was already getting his attention. The injustice of it all made my blood boil. He didn't get to do this and walk away clean. He didn't get to rewrite the story and paint himself as the confused husband, falling out of love. Not when I had evidence, not when I had timelines, not when I had the truth, and a burning desire to do something with it. He thought he had the upper hand because I was quiet, because I hadn't confronted him the night I saw them, because I didn't scream or throw things or cry in the middle of the restaurant. But silence is deceptive. Because while he thought I was breaking, I was actually building, and he had no idea what was coming next. It's one thing to be betrayed. It's another to realize that betrayal is being financed with your own money. That your life, the one you built brick by brick, sacrifice by sacrifice, is being used as the foundation for someone else's fantasy. A new life where you've been erased, replaced, forgotten. That was the part that made me sick. This wasn't just a marriage falling apart. This was theft. Identity theft. Emotional theft. Financial theft. My husband wasn't just cheating on me. He was siphoning our life into someone else's arms, while leaving me to hold the bills and the memories. And the worst part? He had a plan. He was carefully, methodically engineering his exit. I started to see it in everything. The way he avoided long-term commitments, the way he grew less involved in our finances, the way he suddenly stopped talking about kids, something we'd spent years dreaming about. I remember the moment it truly hit. Me. I was never part of his future plans. I was just the placeholder until he could walk away clean. I could see how easily he could have ruined me. If I hadn't followed my gut that night. If I hadn't turned the car around and seen it for myself. If I had continued to believe the I'm just tired and work's been insane lies, he could have disappeared one day and left me with the mortgage, the debt, and nothing but silence. This mattered because I had sacrificed so much for him. I gave up a promotion at my old job because we decided he would take the bigger role in his firm. I moved across the state for him. I built a new life in a city I never really felt at home in. All because I believed we were a team. That it was temporary. That we were investing in something together. But he was never building with me. He was building a way out. That realization knocked the wind out of me. I had worked late nights, picked up freelance jobs to help pay for his business trips, made excuses for him when he missed family events. I had defended him even when I felt alone in my own marriage. And for what? So he could wine and dine someone else on the same salary I helped him earn? So he could take her to the same places we celebrated our anniversaries while claiming he needed space to think? No. This wasn't just a betrayal of love. It was a betrayal of time, effort, energy, of the woman I had become for him. I thought about the younger version of myself, the girl who'd married him in a vineyard with her whole heart in her eyes. She deserved better. I owed it to her, not just to survive this, but to take control of the narrative. He didn't just cheat on me. He tried to rob me of my future. And it wasn't just about me anymore. This mattered because if I let this go, if I let him quietly walk away and start a new life without consequences, it would mean everything he did was acceptable. That you could lie, manipulate, and destroy someone's life and still come out clean on the other side. No. He needed to feel the weight of what he'd done. He needed to understand that there are consequences. And I was going to be the one to make sure he did. Because women like me, we don't fall apart. We calculate. We recover. We strike back. And when we do, we make damn sure they remember it. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I didn't even confront him when I got home that night. Because I knew that if I wanted justice, not just vengeance, I had to be smarter than him. Smarter than the lies, smarter than the cover-ups, smarter than whatever fantasy world he was building with her. So I crafted a plan. Not out of rage, but out of precision. The first thing I did was back up everything. Texts, photos, financial records, calendar logs, GPS data from our shared apps. If he thought he'd covered his tracks, he underestimated the kind of woman he married. I knew where to look, and more importantly, I knew how to look without tipping him off. I created a private folder, offline, password protected, hidden from the cloud. I called it Blueprint. Because that's what it was, the foundation for tearing down everything he thought he could get away with. The second thing I did was call a lawyer. Not just any lawyer. I called Amanda Green, a friend of my cousin's and a pit bull in divorce litigation. She didn't do amicable, she did justice. I didn't even tell Eric I'd spoken to her. Not yet. That part would come later, when the papers hit his desk like a loaded gun. But first, I needed more than suspicions and screenshots. I needed irrefutable proof. Proof that wouldn't just embarrass him, but corner him, legally, financially, socially. That's when I reached out to a private investigator. Expensive? Yes. Worth it? Absolutely. Within a week, I had everything. Photos of him and her walking into a hotel, time-stamped room reservations, records of late-night dinners and getaways, and even a few grainy audio snippets of their conversations. The PI had even dug up that she wasn't just some random woman. She was an associate at his firm. Which meant his affair wasn't just personal, it was professional misconduct. He was sleeping with a subordinate. That opened doors I hadn't even planned on yet. I wasn't just dealing with a cheating husband anymore. I was dealing with a man who could lose his job, his reputation, and his financial standing if the right information landed in the right hands. And I was holding all of it. But I wasn't just going to blow it up for drama. No, I wanted him to feel it strategically, piece by piece. So I made a checklist: secure personal finances. I opened my own account, moved half of our joint savings into it, perfectly legal, and advised by Amanda. I rerouted my paycheck, canceled joint credit cards, and removed him as an authorized user. Document everything. I started keeping a journal, dates, times, conversations. Every time he lied to my face, I wrote it down. Not for the sake of memory, but for court. Control the narrative. I didn't tell anyone at first. Not friends, not family. Because the moment rumors start, control slips away. And I needed control, like I needed oxygen. Set the stage. Our anniversary was coming up. 10 years together, 5 married. He had already suggested a low-key dinner. Just us. I agreed, smiled, played the part. Because I knew that night would be the turning point. I was going to let him walk into a perfectly planned trap. Not out of malice, but out of justice. He had taken so much from me. Time, love, trust, stability. It was time I took something back. Not just my life, but my power. Because while he was out there building a lie, I was building the truth. And the truth was going to destroy the fantasy he thought he could live in forever. While he went about his days like nothing had changed, I became someone entirely new. I was no longer the trusting wife. I was the architect of his downfall. And every move I made was deliberate. First, I needed to make sure my exit wasn't just emotional. It had to be clean, calculated, and airtight. That meant gathering not just evidence, but leverage. I started small. I checked the financial statements daily. Anything unusual, I flagged and copied. I learned that he was subtly transferring funds into a brokerage account I didn't know existed, one he had opened using a different address. That alone would look very bad in court, especially when paired with the PI's documentation of his affair. I brought all this to Amanda. She smiled. "He's digging his own grave," she said. "You just keep handing me the shovel." I kept records. Not just of the cheating, but of everything. Gaslighting, deception, money movements, workplace misconduct. I wasn't just building a case for divorce. I was building the story that would define how this divorce ended. And with the weight of what I had, it wasn't going to be in his favor. But I didn't stop at the legal. I prepared socially. For weeks, I kept up appearances. We hosted friends, went to events, even took photos together. He smiled and I smiled back, because nothing unnerves a liar more than the one being lied to acting like they don't know. Behind that smile, I was taking back my life. I made copies of our marriage certificate, property titles, tax returns, and insurance documents. I consulted a financial planner and had my own assets evaluated. I created a list of everything I had brought into the marriage and everything we had built together. That anniversary dinner, I planned every detail. I booked it at the same place. He took her, the same restaurant where I first saw them. I made the reservation in my name, wore the red dress he always loved, and put on the necklace he bought me our second Christmas together. I looked like a wife in love. But I was a woman about to dismantle her husband. He arrived late, of course, probably texting her. I kissed him on the cheek and clinked glasses with him as if nothing was wrong. Over wine and pasta, he said, "I've been thinking a lot lately about our future." I smiled. Me too. Because in 3 days, he'd receive a formal letter from Amanda with a full divorce filing, including a detailed breakdown of his infidelity, his financial misconduct, and a request for a forensic audit of all shared assets. And it wouldn't stop there. I had already scheduled a confidential meeting with HR at his firm. The affair violated several company policies, including fraternization with a subordinate and using company funds during business trips where she accompanied him. The PI's photos alone would be enough to trigger a review. This wasn't about revenge. It was about truth, consequences, justice. And I wanted every single one to land precisely where it belonged. The power of preparation is that it gives you composure. I wasn't unraveling. I wasn't seeking pity. I was collecting facts and wielding them like weapons. To anyone going through this, don't underestimate your instincts. If something feels wrong, it probably is. And once you really know, don't react. Don't explode. Build. Because the ones who win aren't the ones who scream. They're the ones who show up to the battlefield with evidence, lawyers, and a plan. And as I sat across from him at that anniversary dinner, watching him talk about our future with lies dripping from his mouth, I wasn't angry anymore. I was ready. Because the next time he looked into my eyes, it wouldn't be over wine and pasta. It would be in court. 3 days after our anniversary dinner, he walked into the house whistling. He had no idea what was waiting for him on the kitchen counter. The envelope was unassuming, white, crisp, bearing the name of my attorney. He glanced at it with mild curiosity, then opened it casually, as though it might be junk mail. His face changed instantly. First confusion, then shock, and finally, the fear. "What the hell is this?" he asked, holding up the papers like they were some mistake. "That," I said calmly, "is your wake-up call." He started pacing. "You're divorcing me?" "You're lucky that's all I'm doing," I said. "Check the attachments. There's a full breakdown of your affair, the money you funneled into that secret account, and screenshots of your little hotel dates with her." He stared at me, pale. "You hired someone to follow me?" "I did what I had to do," I said. "You made a choice, repeatedly, and now, so have I." The anger came next. Of course it did. Liars don't like being exposed. "You're trying to ruin my life," he snapped. "No," I said. "You did that all on your own. I'm just making sure it costs you." He fell into a chair, running his hands through his hair. "You're blowing this out of proportion." That made me laugh. Actually laugh. "You gaslit me for months," I said. "You drained our accounts. You cheated. You brought her into our life and thought you could walk away with everything. Clean, unscathed. I'm not blowing anything out of proportion. I'm setting things right." And then I handed him the second envelope, this one addressed to his HR department. "Don't worry," I said. "I haven't sent it yet, but I will if you make this messy." He blinked. "You'd go that far?" "I've already gone farther," I said. "You're the one who had no boundaries. This is called accountability." He tried bargaining next, offering to split things evenly, offering to keep it quiet, saying he'd move out that week. But it was too late for negotiation. I'd already set everything in motion. The court date was scheduled. The financial audit was underway. His firm would soon know everything. Because people like him don't learn unless the world crashes down. And I was the one holding the match. By the end of the week, he was out of the house. 2 weeks later, his firm had launched an internal investigation. The woman he cheated with transferred to another office, quietly, discreetly. But I knew, and so did everyone else. His image, shattered, his plans, obliterated. He thought he was building a new life. But he did it on lies, and lies collapse when you pull the truth out from under them. As for me, I walked out of that marriage with my dignity intact and a renewed sense of who I was. I moved into a smaller place, closer to work, and started rebuilding on my terms. I even got the promotion I put off years ago. Funny how quickly life starts giving back once you stop bleeding for people who only take. People ask if I ever saw him again. I did, once. 6 months later, at a mutual friend's party. He looked worn, aged, like someone who'd lost more than he could admit. He tried to smile at me across the room. I didn't smile back. Because closure doesn't come from them apologizing. It comes from knowing they can't hurt you anymore. I didn't need an apology. I had something better. Justice. I turned his lies into leverage, his betrayal into boundaries, and his manipulation into motivation. He taught me the most valuable lesson of all. Never give someone the power to destroy you without first knowing how to destroy them back. He promised me he was catching up on emails, but I knew better. And in the end, he was the one who got caught.